Thank you all very much for joining this morning. My name's John O'Halloran. I look after CIPFA's consultancy work and have worked extensively through police and local authorities over the last few years and very involved in local government reorganisation. We have put this seminar on this morning because local government reorganisation is getting a lot of airtime. It is real. It is going to happen. And there's not a lot out there that we can see around the implications of that for fire and police. So we've put together a panel this morning with a great deal of experience around local government reorganisation and also with a police and fire background. So we've got Simon Alsop, who's an ex-Section 151 in both police and fire and works in CIPFA and leads our work on local government reorganisation, particularly liaising with the MHCLG. And so Simon can give some insights into their thinking at the moment. We've got Ian Kosh, who many of you will know as the Director of Finance for Greater Manchester Police, in which he works in a mayoral model, which is becoming more prevalent throughout the country and will be becoming more prevalent as we go through the next few years. We also have Simon Dennis, who's an advisor with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners and is working with the Home Office on police reform and can bring a lot of insights into that as well. So in terms of today, we're going to ask each of the panel members to give about 10 minutes. If you've got questions as they talk, please put them in the chat. We will then take the questions in the second part of the discussion and hopefully cover all the points that you want. We will make the audio available afterwards to everyone on the session, and if needs be, we will also follow up with anything that you want in writing. So without any further ado, can I ask Simon Alsop to give us a benefit of his knowledge on local government reorganisation and MHCLG and all things finance?
Yeah, thank you, John. Morning, everybody. Just to give a bit more background, as John said, I've worked in police and fire for a number of years now, latterly at Derbyshire as the Joint Director of Finance for Police and Fire before joining CIPFA. But before that, I sort of led on some of the advisory work at KPMG for blue light services. So got some of the scars from the sort of initial attempts many years ago around police reorganisation and regional police forces. So some of the learning from that obviously might be helpful in this situation we're talking about here with local government reorganisation. I mean, just to start off, I think with fire and police, and particularly fire, there's always been this sort of inherent tension really between looking regionally at collaboration and working more closely together regionally, and there's lots of good examples of where that's happening in police and fire, but also making sure that you've still got those county links as well. And I think this is where perhaps some of that clarity or some of the sort of expectation around or request about what does it mean for police and fire is coming from. So obviously we've got Ian and Simon on the call who have got first-hand experience around devolution, so I'm sure they'll be able to give a bit more insight around that. But just generally, I think there is that challenge around how do you mesh together what you're expected to maybe do regionally with what that means locally, and particularly when you've got local government reorganisation thrown in there again. What does that mean for sort of district boundaries, for operational delivery, for governance, which I'll come on to in a bit. So in terms of where we are at CIPFA at the moment with MHCLG discussions, we are working with MHCLG to support around financial business cases for local government reorganisation. We're working closely with the LGA as well on some of the advice that they've got. And obviously some of the things that we're talking about around disaggregation, aggregation, governance, what does it mean around council tax equalisation will have impacts on police and fire. Now the extent of those obviously depends a lot on existing arrangements. So whether you're within a mayoral model, whether you're a county fire and rescue service, for example, and again, some of the challenges that might come with disaggregating or potentially disaggregating a county fire authority, county fire service into a new combined fire authority, or whether that is within the district boundary or the county boundary, or whether it's beyond as part of a mayoral model. So there are some practical challenges there that local government reorganisation is working through that will have some implications for police and fire and the OPCCs, when it comes to looking at budgets. There are also potential challenges around boundaries. Now, what we understand at the moment is, and you might pick this up yourselves, there isn't necessarily an intention to change any county boundaries as part of local government reorganisation, but certainly looking at what the alignment might be of any district unitaries or new unitaries, which could affect existing district boundaries. And obviously, what does that mean for police and fire when it comes to perhaps how they structure themselves around command units, around district councils, particularly around community safety partnerships, any ring fence funding or shared funding across counties. How will those sorts of things be dealt with if indeed the county does get disaggregated, or county does become two unitaries on the back of local government reorganisation. So I suppose what I've not done on this call is ask how many people are involved with the people from with colleagues from counties and district councils at the moment. But I would hope that those conversations, are starting to happen, and at least if it's not being worked through, aware of some of those challenges that come with it. We are seeing some expectation as well around perhaps an increase around neighbourhood focus from the government as well. So with local government reorganisation, there does seem to be a sort of re-emergence of a discussion around total place for those who might remember it, and what does that mean again for shared budgets, for perhaps more ring-fence targeted funding at neighbourhood level alongside local government reorganisation. Obviously that might be some way down the line as business cases get discussed over the next 6 to 9 months, but it's something again just to be mindful of. And similarly, any existing contractual arrangements that you might have around shared internal audit services, shared procurement, looking at shared committee services particularly. So there'll be things there at the centre where perhaps they're either inherited or shared between the county and the city council, and you make use of those in police and fire. What contractual discussions might be needed around that, and what does that do around resilience potentially as well in some of those areas. Governance, and obviously the potential for changes around elected mayors, but also changes in district council membership as well. Certainly the expectation is that a number of councillors will reduce significantly on the back of local government reorganisation. So what does that mean for, again, existing relationships that you've got with police and crime panels, fire authority membership as well, but also, coping and preparing for potential changes in knowledge and understanding amongst those members, which obviously is something that no doubt be dealing with at the moment on the back of some of the local election results, and some of those challenges might well come through in local government reorganisation as well. In terms of other challenges around capacity capability, I think certainly what we're seeing, and you might be seeing it yourselves in police and fire, is a challenge in terms of being able to perhaps get other items on the agenda to discuss perhaps some of police and fire's priorities because of the demands that are on local government at the moment through reorganisation, but also other things around workforce challenges. So the challenges that you face in police and fire around some of the professional services, legal services, finance, procurement, and others as well, they're being mirrored obviously in local government. So there might be challenges there that you have to be mindful of in terms of being able to secure those services, and actually might find that a number of the people that you perhaps drawn on in the past might be drawn into some of the work in supporting local government. But that almost might present an opportunity also for you as some of the certainly from my experience, some employees within district councils particularly might start looking at what they might want to do in the future, might be concerned about their job security through any reorganisation. So that might well present an opportunity for police and fire when it comes to potentially attracting some people back into some of the key roles that I know you struggle to recruit to sometimes. I'm just in terms of lessons, just quickly conscious of my 10 minutes. What we are hearing, and again, this might be interesting if you do get requests for information from councils, is MHCLG don't want these glossy business cases. There's an expectation that there'll be some risk-based decisions that have to be made, and actually the 80/20 rule will be applied. What does a common data set look like? And there might be, again, requests around prevention information, activity, demand that come to you within police and fire as well, that will be needed for a new council. So I've used the term sort of gritty, not glossy, when it comes to some of the things that might need to go in business cases, and some of those requests, again, should involve you in key areas around community safety, perhaps transport, housing, highways, some of the things where you work in partnership, particularly making sure that the focus is around safe and legal, and also police and fire, making sure that you're aware of any sort of unintended consequences, perhaps from any local government reorganisation around demand that might come to your doorstep. And I know there's been discussions around that in terms of what the extent of the police role is and fire role when it comes to social care, mental health, and some of those things. And that's something, again, just to be mindful of, that there might well be disruption there that you need to plan for. But I think ultimately, the experience that you've got in police and fire around civil contingency planning, Gold Command, there are lessons there that you can learn, you can share with your county and district colleagues, and how perhaps they could help manage some of these challenges. I think that Gold Command structure, that civil contingencies approach that you're well versed in, will be really helpful to them. I'm going to stop there because I think I might have run over.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I think the only thing that I would just to add to what Simon said there is one of the clear messages that we're getting out of MHCLG for the initial local authority submissions is very much about the not glossy. They would like to try and get everyone to propose numbers on a constant basis or a consistent basis. So they are looking at a templated approach. We are working with them and the LGA to produce that template so that there is a level playing field when it comes to actually reviewing the proposals or the bids into government. So just be aware, it's not about being very glossy. It is about basing it in data and facts. So thank you, Simon. We'll hand over to the other Simon Dennis, please.
Thank you, John, and morning, everybody. And just to introduce myself, I'm Simon Dennis. I'm Strategic Advisor here at the APCC, Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, but I'm involved in the joint leadership of a team based in the Home Office, working directly alongside the Home Office civil servants and professionals drawn from right across the policing system to work on police landscape reform and also the very significant overlap that there is with both English devolution and, of course, the very different arrangements that pertain in relation to partnership working in Wales. So I will just take a brief canter through the police landscape reform side of things, but very happy to take questions if there's particular areas of interest, and then just move on to talk a little bit about devolution and the opportunities and what we're doing in that space. So in short, in relation to police landscape reform, you can with some confidence expect a white paper to be published for consultation just before the summer recess, and that will begin an 8-week process of consultation. It is in its sort of final stages of editing and preparation at the moment, but you can expect that white paper to cover the following sorts of topics. So it's likely to propose a rebalancing of the police landscape in terms of its governance and the arrangement of functions, with perhaps a bit of emphasis on a stronger approach nationally, but also measures to strengthen both local police governance and the powers and functions of PCCs as local leads for prevention and for partnership working in the Be Safe and Feel Safe space. There is a very significant and ambitious programme to improve and codify data and also to bring to bear a national approach to police performance management, and that is likely to call for a great deal more cohesion in the approaches between Home Office, HMIC, FRS, and OPCCs and their combined authority equivalents in terms of scrutiny of policing and agreement as to what success looks like and how to inform the public about the journey that the particular force is on towards that success. But also, as you'd all expect, a very clear emphasis on workforce and culture as the key building block of reform. And that is likely to lead to a second session bill to cover all of those ingredients. So look out for that. And when my little pamphlet of slides comes out after the session, there's some contact details in for members of, for me and for members of my team about that. The Home Secretary also announced a National Centre of Policing last autumn to lead on strategic contracting and the centralisation of some enabling support services, and that has given rise to a Home Office-led efficiencies and collaboration programme, which in its first year aims to drive out something in the order of £90 million of efficiencies and cost recovery. Again, very happy to take questions about aspects of that, even though I don't personally lead on it, or to find out the answers afterwards, as John said we would, if efficiencies and collaboration are of particular interest. I'll move on to something that's probably a little bit more directly related to your agenda today, and that's around that overlap with police reform and devolution. You will all be familiar with the English devolution white paper, which does contain an aspiration, a policy indication to transfer the responsibility for the exercising of PCC functions to mayors where there is a geographical alignment. And we are detecting some signs that there is further enthusiasm to go a little further in relation to that, and to look at mayoral arrangements in areas where that might contain, for example, more than one force area, and so on. And as you'd expect, as a team of practitioners based in the Home Office, we're working very closely around the opportunities and the challenges that might involve, but importantly, also recognising that there will continue to be a bit of a sort of mixed economy in terms of the exercise of those powers, so that both in the immediate term and in the long term, there will continue to be freestanding PCCs that don't form part of mayoralties, and acutely so for good in Wales. And there are colleagues in my team and also in elsewhere in the joint team at a senior level leading on ensuring that the Welsh context is carefully considered, and that the opportunities of English devolution in terms of partnership working and so on are properly recognised and made real in the Welsh context as well. Lastly, just kind of mindful of time really, is to let you know that we have commissioned with the assistance of an external consultancy a piece of work to consider the evidence so far and the learning to be taken from the experience so far in terms of the transfer of PCC and PFCC powers and functions to mayoralties. We've had a lot of cooperation from across the whole sort of local public sector and national policing, fire and crime family in relation to that. I'm very grateful, and there may be people on this call who've contributed. We aim to make that guidance available in pretty early course, and for it to contain some indication of the recognition of the challenges and the uncertainties around that transition process, but also some guidance and key sort of guardrails and questions that colleagues in local government and in OPCCs and equivalents might wish to consider when designing their transition programme. For example, governance arrangements, which of course are very different in a single elected individual model to a committee-based model, the design of the organisation, the absolutely vital importance of a cohesive organisational culture, and the importance of bringing the hearts and minds of people who work within the organisations along on that journey, and recognising the importance, for example, of collective owned values and some of the very important kind of business and corporate hygiene factors that matter so much. So, for example, things like harmonisation of terms and conditions will be at the forefront of those sorts of programmes. But whilst at the same time recognising that the arrangements for single elected individual performance and scrutiny management are likely to change under police landscape reform, but also need to be kept up throughout the course of any transition, so that police holding to account is honoured as part of the arrangements that have not had their footings in local government for the last 12 years or so. And then some very basic things. I'm sure there's colleagues who will expect that to be on the list. So some very basic but absolutely vital things about key decisions about the technology platforms that are to be used by a combined authority organisation that subsumes an OPCC, but also shared co-working space and so on. And all of those decisions really matter. And I'll end just briefly, if I may, on a kind of really positive note. I hope that the reassurance that the guidance will bring to those involved will be helpful. It recognises that in many areas mayoral transition will follow on from local government reorganisation, which will have used up an awful lot of bandwidth and energy for local government colleagues, and we are aiming to be of the most assistance that we can to ensure that combined authorities are stood up as high performing organisations. But an important kind of keynote to end on really is just to focus on the opportunities. And I hope Ian Kosh won't mind if I just pay tribute to Greater Manchester Police, who hosted the joint reform team recently. And we were reminded of the opportunity that a really embedded mayoral model brings in terms of strong partnership working, addressing some of the work that GMP have done to address crime and antisocial behaviour hotspots, and some really inspiring stories about what's been achieved in that space with the assistance of the mayor and the convening of local partnership arrangements to make a success of that. And the opportunities are the things that should inspire us all, of course, as public servants, even though there are some complexities and challenges around the transition mechanics. I'll pause there if that's all right. Hopefully I haven't grotesquely exceeded my time, and I'll hand back to you, John.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And I think you've also done my job for me by introducing Ian as well. Can I just say to everyone on the call, we're starting to get questions and comments in the chat. We will take these at the end. Please feel free to put any more in there. So thank you, Simon, as you've quite very tidily set up Ian to come in to talk about his experiences in the mayoral authority. So I hand over to Ian.
Thanks very much, John. Morning, everyone, and thanks for the invite to be able to speak this morning. And Simon, yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear something positive about GMP, which is good to know. So thank you for that. Chief Finance Officer here at Greater Manchester Police. I think throughout my life, local government reorganisation has been a sort of recurring theme. I first came across it in 1974 as a 12-year-old. So I'm sure you can add up and know what age I am. Been around a while, but the local government reorganisation of that time was such an impactful thing, and it stuck with me because it created in Scotland, where I originally come from, the massive Strathclyde Council, biggest in Europe at the time, and all the discussions we're having now, I remember, were being played out back in the 70s. So it's interesting how everything changes but nothing does. My career seems to have been sort of punctuated by periods of local government reorganisation. So for sort of first 25 years of my career, I worked at Lancashire County Council, one of the largest local authorities in England and Wales, and I finished up as Assistant Director of Finance, looking after police but other areas of responsibility as well. And in that period, 1998, we'll remember it well, when two unitary authorities were created, Blackburn with Darwen and Blackpool, and a lot of the issues in relation to what that brings as challenges for reorganisation played out then. And it's a daunting experience actually when it comes to the tactical challenges that come. I'll say no more than that, but just in terms of devolution or reorganisation, there's a lot of tactical accounting, financial activity that we don't want to lose sight of when it comes to reorganisation of local government. But that's probably for another day. I worked in Lancashire Police as Director of Finance between 2010 and 2022. So I was working in that sort of model whereby we had unitary county and also local district councils. Quite an interesting, complex environment to navigate areas such as prevention and activities like that when you're dealing with loads of partnership. And then I came in 2022 across to Greater Manchester and into the mayoral model, and comparing and contrasting, a lot of the issues are very similar. So from a sort of financial background, the model's different. Obviously the mayor is effectively the PCC, and the Mayor Andy Burnham holds that position, but in effect has a Deputy Mayor, Kate Green, former MP for Trafford, who's the Deputy Mayor for Safer, Stronger Communities, and carries out all of the functions that you'd expect, such as setting the precept, held to account under scrutiny by Police, Fire and Crime Panel, and Kate has also got responsibility for fire within that. And I think that's, if I'm to compare and contrast, over the sort of my career, especially since 2010, it's easier, I think, to get things done in a mayoral model. Definitely easier from a policing perspective to get things done. You feel that you're part of that Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Greater Manchester Combined Authority, just to give it some sort of feel, looks after 2.8 million residents, and with a growth potential over the next 5 years for that to significantly go up and beyond 3 million. It's a thriving area, as anybody that's visited Greater Manchester can see, and it brings a lot of challenges. But I think the mayoral model has enabled us, from a policing perspective, to, I think, align our sort of objectives with the Greater Manchester objectives and work collectively and cohesively much more effectively than perhaps would be if we were in a different type of arrangement. 1.1 billion of the 2.6 billion pounds revenue expenditure of the GMCA is policing, with another 100 million for fire. So It's a significant chunk of what is spent in the Greater Manchester combined area. So it's important that we have got that ability to work cohesively and work together. I think that where I think there are some real benefits is under the devolution deal, and the Mayor signed in last year the extension to devolution. I mean, devolution, it's been 11 years now in Greater Manchester. It's a thing that's here. It's in the way that the organisation, the way the communities work. It's here to stay, and it's getting expanded. And I think there are some more wide-ranging powers, social care commissioning, for example, the health commissioning that have come with the new deal. I think enables us to work more effectively. And if I just give a couple of examples of where I see that happening, is in things like the right care, right person. So that's something for those in the police sector will certainly be cognizant of, where it's making sure that people who are suffering from mental ill health get dealt with by the right people, not just by police officers who will try and do their best but have not got the skills, capability and capacity to do it properly. I worked in Lancashire where we brought it in. I worked in Greater Manchester where we brought it in, and I think just that the difference between the two, and both have brought it in really well, but I just think it was much more easier in Greater Manchester to do it because we were part of that Greater Manchester family. We were able to lean into the mayoral model and enable the mayor and the deputy mayor to use their influence and exercise their capabilities in that area to get over some of the really difficult challenging issues with partners, because A, they hold some of the funding, and B, there's a quite cohesive and collective governance regime that enables that sort of thing to perhaps be delivered more effectively. I think the other thing where I see some real benefit, and one of Andy's pledges, one of the Mayor's pledges was to ensure that the Greater Manchester communities have got the ability to live well, free from crime. Couple that with his real desire to drive a much stronger infrastructure on transport, and we've got the tram network, but that tram network isn't the safe. It doesn't feel the safest in terms of people travelling on it, and we have got that from the surveys that we do. So we're doing some really close working relationships with the mayor and his team to work together with Transport for Greater Manchester to not only help deliver a safer, stronger network, which will then help to drive uptake in terms of people travelling on it and hopefully generate more revenue. So it's a win-win, and that again is because we've got that ability to work cohesively and collectively together in that mayoral model. And I think just finally, because I'm conscious of time and I'm probably up about 10 minutes, I think somebody mentioned, Simon mentioned, the second Simon D, mentioned about the efficiency and collaboration programme. I think it gives us a real opportunity to look at how we can drive some efficiencies across that regional footprint. If we look at Greater Manchester as a region, how do we ensure that we can drive some of those efficiencies and productivity benefits that we can get from working more collectively and more cohesively? I think that mayoral model almost lends itself to developing that, and that is certainly something that I think we will see developing over the years, and having a lead into perhaps a wider regional delivery model for policing. I think there's still a bit of water to flow under the bridge, but that's certainly something that certainly needs to be considered, and I think the mayoral model gives us some ability to do that. So I think I'll call it a halt there and give some time for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks to the two Simons as well. We've got some questions. So interestingly, there's a couple around the structure and there's some around finance. We'll take some of the finance ones first because they may be slightly easier. In terms of and this is to all three really, but if we do the order of the speakers, in terms of reorganisation, two finance questions. Do we think there'll be more money around, and then do we think that the current grants that policing get, which are ring fenced, they'll still be ring fenced after reorganisation? So we'll take Simon A, Simon D, and then Ian briefly, and then we'll pick up with more questions. Simon.
Yeah, thanks, John. In terms of more money, we're not hearing there's any more money at all for this. Certainly when it comes to local government reorganisation, the expectation is that counties will contain the costs and any sort of implications or liabilities within the existing county boundary. So I don't think there'll be any more money for policing, given that, and conversations or information we picked up on the back of working with a number of forces and Home Office over the last few months.
Sorry, Simon, just to interrupt. Your sound isn't great. Can you just speak up?
How much of that people heard there, but I'll move it a bit closer. We don't think there's going to be more money. Certainly the expectation and the message we're getting around local government reorganisation is that needs to be managed within county, and any debts and sort of implications needs to be contained within the county. There might be some money for transition, but not much above that. In terms of policing and Home Office funding, again, we're not hearing there'll be more money to help with any sort of devo or regional or restructuring around that. And indeed, there's more challenge, I think, as Simon Dennis said, around making sure that there's arrangements in place to maximise sort of efficiency and savings through national procurement and other national arrangements. In terms of ring fencing funding, certainly the discussions that I was part of in Derbyshire when they were going through the Devo deal was that fire and police funding will be ring fenced, given the sort of almost safe and legal requirements, on vesting or on any new combined authority. But that again, could be subject to change. But I think there is an expectation that there'll be some ring fencing to give some security and stability on any reorganisation, whether that be through Devo or through any sort of county arrangements.
Okay, thank you. Simon D.
Yeah, thanks, John. So just building a bit on that, really. So far in those areas who've adopted a mayoralty, including police and fire, the police fund is ring fenced in the sense that it can't be applied to the general purposes of the combined authority, and that would be, as everybody would be familiar with, it's to be applied to policing purposes. But that the fire position is different, and that has some pros and cons to it. So the first is it forms part of the mayoral combined authorities finances generally, but it does create the scope if the mayor chooses to raise a mayoral precept for that precept not to be capped in the way that an ordinary non-mayoral fire precept would be. So there's some intricacy to that, but that's the sort of basic position. But I think in terms of the question that was in the chat, the police grant and the money from precept it remains applicable only to policing. And then on finance more generally, I mean, look, I hope it's not an overshare to say that the signs are that the spending review is going to be a pretty gloomy picture for many in public services, and I suspect our world is no different in that respect. But with an eye on devolution deal making involves a financial aspect. And a longer period of funding certainty for mayors, for example, does give rise to some different scope for decision making around things like prevention and early intervention, as opposed to governance arrangements that are reliant on year funding. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, thank you. And Ian, you're living this at the moment, so
yeah, just picking Simon's points up there. I mean, obviously, I don't disagree with anything that anybody said about the likelihood of the sort of macroeconomics and the challenges we're going to be facing. I think in the spending review on the 11th, I don't think we're going to get particularly good news, and we're working up on the proviso that it's going to be a tough few years ahead for policing. I think in terms of picking up that latter point that Simon Dennis made about the mayoral precept, that certainly enables the mayor to generate some additional funding, and we've seen that in Greater Manchester. He has, in the last couple of years on the precept, we've been able to convince Andy that it's the right thing to do to go to the limit. So I think that's helpful. I think where Simon's point about the wider devolution deal, the longer term nature of it, I think does give us some real benefit, in terms of some of the stuff I talked about. Whilst transport isn't isolated from challenges financially, it does give us some opportunities there to work collectively to look at how we can generate a better delivery going forward through that sort of almost pooling the resources to simplify it. And I think there are some benefits there for what is going to be a very challenging few years ahead.
Thank you, Ian. The only other thing I would say as a general point is, or reinforce really, is that in all our discussions, both with MHCLG and the Home Office, the indications, without them being overtly saying it, is that the spending review is going to be tough, very, very tough. I mean, certainly the indications are it's going to be tougher this year than it has been for the last few years. So I think that the money will not be in plentiful supply. So I think we just have to accept that, but we'll obviously know soon enough on that. We've got one question in the chat which I'm going to give to Simon Dennis. I'm not sure whether he's going to answer it fully, but it's the question around reducing the number of police forces, Simon, from the 43.
Well, I'm certainly happy to attempt an answer. I think I can be pretty clear that there is nothing I have detected suggests that there is a top-down kind of reorganisation of force structures in anyone's mind. So I hope that is suitably clear. I think probably to give a complete answer around it, once you begin to reform the landscape and the way that where functions sit locally, regionally, and nationally, there might well be some consideration of whether the 43 force structure is the optimum, but it isn't part of the point of the exercise, and it's something that that we are expected to work both now and in future jointly with government around. So I think that's a pretty direct answer to the question, John. But with that, obviously, it's not for me to speak for ministers, but I think it's probably helpful if I'm candid in this forum about what I'm detecting. So I hope that's a helpful answer.
Okay, thank you. The next question I'm going to go to will be, I'll give to the two Simons, Simon Allsop first. It's one that has been talked about a lot in local government as far as their reorganisation is concerned, and it's the issue around boundaries and whether boundaries are going to be changed, whether they're coterminous, and issues such as that. The basic principle that, as my understanding, is that the as far as local government reorganisation is concerned, the building blocks are district councils, and in essence, there is very few proposals that I think potentially will get through if it's going to change county boundaries. But that's my personal opinion. Simon A, have you got any comments on that? And then go to Simon D.
I'd agree, John, that we're not hearing that there's any real desire at all to look at at changing county boundaries. Certainly, I mean, it's a minor point, but they're preserving ceremonial county boundaries, but that's not an indication of that. But no, I think there is certainly a desire, going back to the question around opportunity to look at alignment with policing boundaries to simplify things. So I think it's certainly worth having a conversation with your representatives from the councils in Cheshire to see how you can feed into that process. But I think they are open, as we understand it, in MHCLG to look at how things can be simplified, and if that simplifies relationships, funding, service delivery, then that's worth the conversation.
Okay, Simon, Dave, you any comments on this one?
I don't know that I could materially add to what to what Simon A has just said now.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the other comments, which questions which is slightly linked tenuously, he says, is whether we think there's going to be any change in the funding formula, or it will be reviewed, particularly to take account of population growth above the national average. I know we've had conversations with MHCLG on this, Simon. I'm not sure we've got an answer, but I leave you to comment.
Yeah, no, I don't think there is an answer. That there is, again, a willingness, a bit like I just said there, to look at that. I think the reality is, with all that's going on at the moment, that's not going to be a priority, I don't think, unfortunately. What we do know is that, in terms of the business cases that are coming forward for reorganisation, they are based on existing funding allocations. There isn't an expectation that they will be based on any sort of fair funding review at this stage. Indeed, quite the opposite. The guidance is you stick with what funding you've got now when you form your business cases.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a question about head of paid service, which I'm not sure we can sort out here, to be honest. But one of the other ones, Simon, do you want to comment on that? Is that
on head of paid service? Really briefly, yes. And Emily, that's posed the question, happy to have a conversation with you about the specifics. But in short, in York and North Yorkshire, which is a very similar transition situation to the one that pertains in Essex, we dealt with that question by making bespoke provision in the constitution for how the chief fire officer was to exercise leadership, and recognising the chief fire officer as a chief officer of the combined authority. And that, of course, is different, as you've rightly identified in the question, to the position that immediately preceded it, where a fire authority has to designate its head of paid service. But we achieved it, as I say, by careful crafting in the constitution. Happy to pick up the details separately if that would be useful.
Okay. And I think there's a question about in terms of contribution and sharing experiences more widely from everyone on the call with in terms of local reorganisations. I guess in terms of working with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, Simon, you want people to write back into you? I mean, at the end of this, when we send out the recording, we will put contact names on the email so that you've got contact names to come in. But I guess you're happy to take any suggestions and any input.
Yes, I am. So the evidence gathering phase for the piece of work that I referred to in my kind of little presentation has closed, but the work continues in terms of its substance, and I have a list of contacts which I will try and put in the chat just now, so that colleagues have got them straight away for the various leads within my team, and we're very, very happy to take input, notwithstanding the closure of the evidence gathering phase for the particular piece of work. So, and as you say, John, the pamphlet that I've done around this has got those details in it as well. So I'll try and paste it in with my famous technical expertise.
Don't. I mean, we will do all this in an email that goes out with the recording, and then I'm just going to throw, because I'm conscious of time, one last question to Simon A, and that is in terms of well, actually no, we'll take one other question as well. Is, do we know when what the time scale of the CSR is likely to land this year?
Yeah, I think the announcement is expected on the 11th of June. We certainly know that submissions have been going into the Treasury for the last 6 weeks or so from conversation we had. So it's, I suppose is that broadly within spring. I know that they're very broad, these timescales, but 11th of June is what we're hearing.
Okay, thank you. Final question, and then we'll go. Because I think it's an important thing is around the assets transfer from the PCC to the mayor. Do different, is there a statutory date? Is there different sets of consolidated accounts? I mean, my understanding at the moment, I don't think there are. I'm not sure whether there are any published dates. I don't know whether either of the Simons have got any further information on that. Simon Dennis?
I can comment on what's gone before, and that is that assets transfer at the point that the mayor takes office. So there's no handover period as there would be with a PCC. So it's straight away on the day the mayor takes office. And then on accounts, what has happened before is that rather artificially, the financial year has been extended for these purposes to sort out the consolidation of accounts. What will be useful would be to make sure that lessons are learned about the length of the necessary extension, because frankly, I think it's been too short in West Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, and other areas for the process to run smoothly. So hopefully they've learned a little bit from what's gone before in that space. But that's the mechanism that's put in place to help with the accounts.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. Ian Kosh unfortunately had to drop off to go to another meeting. I'd like to thank the panelists. I think they've been very frank and open with their views, and I really appreciate that. I also like to thank everyone who's attended for spending the time to listen. I think this is it is clearly an ongoing issue, and one that if people would find it useful, we will run a similar one again in say 3 months' time. But please let us know. We'll send out the recording. We will put contact names on that. If you'd like another one of these or you want any further information, please contact the names on there. And all I've left for me to say is thank you very much indeed for attending, and thank you again to the panelists. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.